I'm Jim Keegan, and we're in Laguna Beach, California. Well, I've been involved in homeless issues for about 30 years. Initially in Los Angeles with a shelter for women only. When I came down to Orange County, I got involved with a thing called Isaiah House, which was a Catholic worker community. I was looking for a situation locally, and I started cooking in a shelter here. It's a shelter for people who are sober. So I then started going to the park. I noticed there were a lot of homeless people, define a lot. Our population is somewhere between 50 and 70. They're virtually all chronically homeless, which is a term that's defined by HUD. And it has two points to it. One is the length of time you've been on the street, and the second is you suffer from a disability, mental or physical. And virtually all of our population, homeless population, is chronically homeless. So anyway, I found that there was no one doing breakfast, so I started doing coffee and pastries in the morning. And I've been doing that now for, I guess, about 3 years, I think. Somebody else takes care of Saturday, and somebody else takes care of Sunday. Carl Jaspers wrote a book, The Origin and Goal of History, back I think in the 50s. It's been updated by Karen Armstrong in a book called The Great Transformation. But basically the thesis is that during what he called the axial age, which would be the age of the Hebrew prophets, the Greek philosophers, Buddha, etc. All the great systems throughout the world came to the same conclusion, which was that an ethic of compassion is going to do you a lot more good than metaphysics. So anyway, that made a huge impression on me, that idea of perhaps things are that simple. And so I've always tried to find a way to do some of that kind of stuff. I taught in the jail, I taught in a prison. But there's been a certain consistency to working with homeless people. There are a couple of pastors in town, several, that are terrific. The fellow from the neighborhood Congregational Church is terrific, and the Universalists, Unitarians, or did I get that backwards? The Methodists, Episcopalians. There's some of those churches, and the Catholic Church until this year used the school, but there's been construction going on there. The churches do a cold weather shelter. When the temperature dips below a certain point during the winter or rain or something like that, they open the churches or some room near the churches, and usually there's a meal and a movie, and then people can sleep warm. It's not ideal, you're sleeping on the floor and stuff like that, but it's an improvement. At least you're not exposed to the elements. The government, the council formed a task force on homelessness, and I wasn't a member, but I went to a good number of the meetings, and some of the things that were being said I thought were alarming, and I thought that they were creating a class called the homeless. And I mean, I actually said this aloud. I said, if you think of what you're saying, because the public are allowed to speak after the meeting kind of thing, if you think of what you're saying and you substitute, how about Jew, or gay, or Hispanic, or Catholic, no one would tolerate it for a second. But because they're homeless, all of a sudden they're them. I'd be willing to bet it wouldn't be the choice of most policemen that they be the people who are charged with this. To do nothing at this point is just to put ourselves back in the position we were 2.5 years ago, where everybody was unhappy. We're using the police, it's not working. You know how it works. The guy's doing something he shouldn't be doing. It used to be sleeping. That was the ordinance. You couldn't sleep in public. And the argument is that's a violation his Eighth Amendment rights if there's no alternative, or has to be able to sleep. That, okay, we write the ticket, it's ignored, it goes to warrant, he's arrested, he goes to jail, he gets before a judge, the judge says time served. There's a lot of expense involved there, and nothing's been fixed. Nothing. It's a pattern. It's going to go on and on. We have people in town who have gotten hundreds, literally hundreds of these citations, for public intoxication, for open container, for sleeping on the beach, all these kind of standard of living, or whatever the term is. And that hasn't worked. The merchants aren't happy. The Chamber of Commerce people aren't happy. So let's do something new. And what's new is that, well, HUD has been telling us that this works. They acknowledge this doesn't work, this being what we've been doing. So maybe we should try this. But it takes a lot of courage, and there's not a lot of support out there. I think everybody has a different talent, and if I have one, it was I just stuck with it. Once this started and I saw the issue, it was this poor woman lawyer who was the managing partner of a big law firm, and I'd done a little business with her, and I just kept calling her and telling her what was happening until she designated some associates to deal with this issue for the firm, and then they ultimately recruited the ACLU. So I had that going for me. I was like a dog with a bone. I wasn't going to let go. The success we're looking for would be measured, I think, in beds. Permanent housing. Housing first is the approach that HUD has been trying to sell for a long time, and it's been successful wherever it's been tried. Wherever it's been tried, it saved the government lots of money. With that, there's an enormous harm reduction that comes. That harm reduction is not just in that individual who's using or abusing less. There are fewer police calls, fewer calls for emergency medical technicians, fewer trips to the emergency room, less nights in jail. There's a huge reduction in cost of expense. So, and fewer people staggering outside the tourist zones, that type of thing. So we'll measure our success, if we have any, when we have beds for our chronically homeless, our disabled. We've had, and I mean the we collectively, all of the people who have been working with the homeless in Laguna for years. We've had a fair amount of success in getting people sober or into stabilized situations, that type of thing. And I, excuse me, I always make the point, we really don't have programs. We just have some busybodies, some old fools like me that go around trying to help people. If you've made life a little richer, a little kinder for some people, I think that's about as much as you can hope for.